Okay, and we are live.
Nice.
Okay, so welcome everyone to the H20 Podcast for Heaven to Others.
Yeah.
This is our first episode, so bear with us on the ins and outs.
Justin will figure it out as we go, but
we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
My name is Jesse C.
My name is Arlo.
And we're just starting this podcast because we see the opportunity to be able to share the gospel with a lot of people,
Yeah.
And that's what I live for.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't always, but yeah, that's what I'm living for now. So
as for the gospel, how did the gospel speak to you? What caused you to come to the Lord originally?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with my testimony. I grew up in a nominal Catholic home, in that, like, my mom said she was Catholic, but if you would ask her anything about the Bible, not a clue. She wouldn't even know like basic, like, to me, like, there's some stories in the Bible that you just have to know, like Moses is definitely one that you just have to know, like,
right, John 3:6.
Yeah, exactly, stuff like that, right? And she knew the name Moses, but she wouldn't be able to tell you like his story or anything. And that's how I grew up,
which is pretty common.
Yeah, it's super, especially in Catholic, and especially within the Catholic community. That's super common. Just because whenever we would go to church, like once a month probably, and it was the same. And I could tell it was the same situation for everyone that was there, because like they were all just there just because out of ritualistic routine. Like, they're just here to listen to the father give it his sermon, and then they're out, man. They're not.
Yeah, and a lot of people can relate to that too, because that's what they've seen.
Yeah. So that's how I grew up, right? And then also my dad, he never went to church with us. So my mom would take us once a month, and my dad never went. So to me, the Bible or God wasn't really serious in a way, like, it's like, oh, it's just a thing we do, kind of.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll fast forward now to like when I was like 17. I have the very, I guess, typical cliche drug use type of story. I was doing some pretty heavy drugs at 17, actually. And so this is where it starts. I was getting high off of not just weed but other stuff.
Well, why do you think you turned to drugs?
It was definitely an escape. Yeah, it was I started living on my own when I was like 15, because my situation at home, mom and dad just got divorced, and they just completely forgot that they had children.
Yeah.
And we would do it, like, when you have that type of unsupervised authority, like, no one was supervising me at like 13, really. That's really when it started. But like at 15, like, I had no supervision. Like, you tend to do dumb stuff. You're going to do crazy things, And that was just my situation. I was 15 and I could just do whatever I wanted. I didn't go to school. I didn't do, nothing really. Like, I just would party with other friends that were in the same situation as me, probably, And also I used to hang out with like older people too, which is kind of weird now that I'm thinking about it. Because I was like hanging out with like 25-year-old and I was like 15, And me as a 25-year-old would never hang out with a 15-year-old,
Right, yeah.
So... I was 15, just kind of living on the streets. Mostly, I was couch surfing from friend's house to friend's house, really. And just started doing a bunch of drugs. And I remember, so like I said, like, I've always had this belief in God. It was just never really serious, right? And I was just like high one day, getting high with my girlfriend at the time, and this owner of a bong shop. We were at his shop, and we were just getting high, and I don't remember what they were talking about exactly, but I remember like thinking about what they were talking about, and something occurred in my head, and I just remember the answer. That's all I could remember. I remember that whatever they were talking about, I said in my head, I was like, oh, life is a Bible story. That's what I said.
Oh, wow.
And,
Yeah.
And I was looking at a clock. I remember that, and I was just like, oh, that's cool. And then in my head, I'm like, damn, that feels really profound, man. That whatever that answer that I came up with, it felt super profound to me. I remember just thinking, and then I got more into thinking about it. yeah, if life is a Bible story, that means God is 100% real. That's just the little conclusions I was jumping to.
Yeah.
I was like 17 at the time.
And that's totally God that does that. Like, he's the one that's speaking to you, encouraging you, like showing that stuff to you.
Yeah,
It's definitely not the enemy, right?
So, and this is where it gets kind of like dark though. So I was like, oh man, that means God is real. Huh. If he's real, I'm not living a pretty godly life right now. And then I was like, huh. And then I was just like, I remember thinking like, oh, okay. I mean, that only affects me if I'm going to die. I was like, wait, I could die right now. And then, dude, when you talk about like a real party pooper situation, like,
Yeah.
I was just like, I was just freaking out, you know, because like, I could just die right now. Like, I'm 7. No, I was like, I get a heart attack, and then I was trying to like calm myself down. Like, you're 17, you're not gonna get a heart attack. And then I'm like, wait, that happens though. It does happen. You can get a heart attack right now. You know, just like freaking myself out. And then like I was just like kind of looking at my girlfriend. I was like, yo, we got to go. She's like, she knew something was up, so she's like, okay. So we get in her car, and I was just like, dude, like something's up, man. I can't stop this thinking. Like it won't stop. It won't stop. I just keep on. It won't stop. It won't stop. She's like, what? What's wrong? I was like, no, you just don't go. Like you just don't get it. Like I can't even explain it to you right now. Like now I sound like a crazy one. I was like, no, like God is real. Like you need to get there. And then she was freaking out too. She's like, whoa, what's going on? You know?
Yeah.
So I was just like, I can't explain this to you. It's really hard to explain to you. And then I had this series of like, okay, well, if God is real, I was just like, I need to share that with people. And I was like, oh, that's easy. Like, that's hard. What am I talking about? I got to share this with the world now? Like,
yeah.
Like, I just had this really, it was, again, I'm 17 years old. I have no real knowledge of the Bible. I just automatically went to God is real and I should fear him because of the life that I'm living. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah. And so
that's heavy for anybody, but like a 17-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Because you're 17, you're still not an adult.
Yeah.
Like you're not a child either.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to figure all that out.
Oh, yeah. And I was a really dumb 17-year-old just because of like my living situation. Like I was 17 probably with the mental capacity of like a 14-year-old probably, you know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah. And then, so that's how I got the thought of like, okay, God is real and I should take him serious. And again, there's no one, and this is how I know it was God though, because like there's no one feeding me anything. It's just my brain making these, now that I like, even like telling this story again, like to me, this is all still logical. Like,
right.
You know, like oh, it still makes sense to me. I mean, obviously it took weird turns. Some like at some points it did take super weird turns. So for, I want to say like a year after that, like my brain was not working. Like I had this constant anxiety. I had this, what it was also, it was complete, like, I was condemning myself, like, just thinking like, oh, I'm like, never going to be worthy of God, never. And, I remember at one point, I probably needed psychiatric help at some point because, like, I was thinking that, you know what, I think maybe God's telling me, like, I should die or he needs me to die or something, or maybe today's the day. Like every day after that I would think like, oh, like I'm going to die today. And then at some point, like I would just sit down, all right, God, if you're going to do it, just do it now. I don't know. I guess I'm just going to hell, you know? Like,
yeah.
So like I definitely needed psychiatric help. And I was like that probably for like a year, like just in my own head, not really being able to like talk to people about it, not coming to the conclusion that I should go to church, you know?
Right.
But I did. I ended up going to church like a month after that, explaining this to the pastor at the time. And looking back, I realized that that pastor was probably not the most, I don't want to say knowledgeable. He was a pretty knowledgeable dude, but like he didn't really help, really. And also that pastor, I found out years later that he got arrested for like kiddie porn. So,
man. Yeah.
So, yeah. But anyways, yeah, so, you know, a whole year of just me doing that, but also slowly like coming to the Bible, really. So at that point, I believe in God. I think I should respect him. I fear him. I definitely feared him. I was so scared of the thought of God, like just, you know, and, but Jesus was not in the picture yet. Like that didn't even, actually, to be honest, I would still be like, Jesus, that's whatever. I don't believe in Jesus.
Right.
But I do believe in God. And then slowly these new problems started coming about, like, oh, well, if I believe the Bible, which that is, Jesus is in the Bible over and over, even from Old Testament, which I read the Bible at that point. I was reading the Bible. I never read it through from one page to the other. I just kind of jumped through from here to there, and I would I'm thinking of where I was at the time. That's what I'm sorry. I'm just kind of,
It's all good.
I mean, that's technically where I'm at now. Like, I ended up realizing then, the whole Jesus thing, that actually makes more sense, because a lot of the questions that I had I'd be like, well, this doesn't make sense, and then it would get answered, and then kind of just finding out that, like, oh, Jesus is God's logical answer for the problems that I thought I had. So me being like, when I was super scared of, like, oh, I'm gonna go to hell, like, yeah, that's true if you didn't have Jesus,
Right.
Yeah. So to me, like, Jesus was like the answer, which is so cliche, right? Jesus is always the answer, but
Right.
yeah, no, like it was everything just started kind of like lining up, and I was coming with these answers of like, oh, it's Jesus.
Yeah. And, and that's so interesting, because you had fear because you knew you were in sin. So you had fear of God's wrath and judgment.
Yeah.
And the obvious answer is, well, it's not always obvious to everyone, right?
Yeah, no, it took time to get there.
But the answer is Jesus. And there are people that are looking at that themselves right now, going, well, why is Jesus the answer? Not realizing that it's God's wrath that it's coming upon humanity because of our sin.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want that wrath on us, right?
Yeah.
He wants to keep us from his wrath. And his solution is for himself to come as the Son, Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And to pave that way for us so that we avoid his wrath.
Yeah. And see, exactly what you're saying right now, that's the conclusion I came up with. Without reading the Bible, though, to me, this was logical.
Okay.
Like, 'cause I would skip through it here and there, and then I just kind of like...
And again, that's all the Holy Spirit, right?
Yeah.
Like, even when Jesus he was asking the disciples, who do people say I am? And they, some say you're Elijah, they come up with all these answers. And he says to them, well, who do you say I am? I think it's Peter. He responds and says, well, you're the Christ.
Yeah.
And Jesus says, is my Father in heaven who revealed that to you. Like, that doesn't come to us naturally, because naturally we want to be like, Jesus, what? Who? Yeah. That's just some made up story.
So it's funny, because naturally what I would do is, especially in my early days, I was trying to tiptoe, like, oh, what can I get away with, though?
Right, yeah.
I'm always like, oh.
It's our nature.
Yeah, like, what can I get away with? Which, in a way, is, like, it's borderline sin just thinking that way, to be like, what can I get away with? How can I sneak my way through, doing things that, like, feed the flesh in a way,
Yeah.
And, but yeah, naturally, like, that's how, like, I saw that, like, oh, that's why this is a problem, though. Like, how do you come up with this answer to this problem that, like, I want to feed the flesh. Like, I do want that. And I don't think I'll ever be able to just beat it 100%, because 100% means you live a sinless life, right?
Right, yeah.
So you're never going to beat it. So, like, how do you, and I remember just thinking this, again, this was my younger days too. Like, I'm probably like 18, 19 at the time, thinking of these kind of questions. And so how do you beat that? And then I remember the conclusion that I came up with, which it wasn't quick. It took a while to get to that conclusion. But it does feel like I organically and naturally got to that conclusion that, oh, Jesus is the answer.
Right.
He's the only logical answer. There is no other way. That's why he says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah.
No one comes to the Father except through me, right? So it just kind of wrapped everything up for me, like, oh, that's the gospel in a nutshell too. That's what the gospel is. It's giving this good news that, like, hey, this problem that is existential and you're facing, here's the answer. And that's, so that's where I'm at with my
man, that's amazing, honestly, because I mean, there are so many testimonies very similar to yours, right? I mean, I have something similar as well, but but the point of it is, doesn't matter where you are in your life. Like you were looking at, like, what was the meaning of life? What's the purpose? I'm just trying to escape. I'm just tired of dealing with not having my parents involved, which is also interesting because we truly want to have guidelines. We want to have a family. That's like built into us, that we want to have rules, if you would.
Yeah.
Right. But, at the same time, we're like, we don't want rules. But the secret story is, when the rules are taken away, you want that, because that's a hint of protection.
Yeah.
Right. That's security for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's interesting, that's the path you took. You were in the depths of, trying to find a place, a roof over your head, trying to escape, being, taking the drugs, of that life, and yet God still reaches you.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a way that's not typical. Like, you didn't walk into the church, somebody shared the gospel to you, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I need Jesus. Like, he was reaching you in a completely different way.
It's funny you say that, though, because in a way, if I, like, in retrospect, like, thinking about, like, my life's journey, there were moments of people, like, trying to share the gospel with me, and me just kind of brushing it away. I remember my sophomore year, and I had gone to a different school in Paris, and I still remember his name was Kevin, and this dude was really nice, and he saw that I was like the only kid there that didn't have any friends, because this was a brand new school, so I'm just like sitting by myself. Comes out to me, he's like, "Hey man," just kind of like a really happy guy, and he's all like, "I was like, you new here or something?" I was like, "Yeah, like, yeah, my name is Jesse, blah blah blah, I'm cool." And then he just immediately like, "Oh, what do you do?" type thing. And he was just like, "Oh," and I get to know him. He's like, "Oh, I mean, I go to church and stuff." And it turns out like, oh, he's like a real Christian. And I was never the guy that like thought like, oh, they're weird. There's a bunch of people that think they're weird if you're Christian, especially like at a high school, And I was like, oh, okay. And he would like invite me to church and stuff. And I was like, all right, I'll go. And I would go with him too.
Yeah.
But I would go just because like I had nothing to do. Like I'm like, again, like I'm at my home situation is not, I don't know anyone, so I'm just going to go. I'm not going to learn. I'm just going because like I want to get out of my home and And like I was like a really nice guy, but like, it was one of the situations where like it was 100% God, trying to like show me this path,
right?
And it was funny because I remember when I would I guess like I would kind of listen, because I remember one time I was talking to some girl at school. I was already like months in, so I already had like new friends and stuff. And I remember she like said something. I can't remember exactly when. I hate telling these stories because like they always sound so fake, but I forget what she said. But I corrected her. I was like, no, actually the Bible says this. And I remember because I learned it because I went to church with him. And like, actually the Bible says this. So whatever you just said is like completely wrong. And some guy looks at me, my other friend at the time, his name was Sergio. He's all like, I like how you talk, man. And I was like, oh, cool. And I thought that was kind of cool because like it's like a wisdom that I felt like I stole in a way, from church,
Yeah.
But he's like, I like how you talk, man. It's smart. And I was like, okay, But yeah, there was moments in my life where I could clear. There was definitely
where the Lord was planting those.
Yeah,
He was for you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, throughout my whole life, actually, it was definitely.
And again, it's just that's the Lord that's coming for you.
Yeah.
Right. Hence, heaven to others.
Yeah.
Right. And the Lord wants you to know Him and to receive His grace and His love and understand His kindness. Obviously, we need to be aware of His judgment, which you became aware of it pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
But there's also that side of God where He deeply loves us. Like the whole purpose of earth and everything is for us. And, He was making those steps. It's an amazing story. I love it. Love to hear it.
I hardly ever tell it. I don't really share my testimony. I always feel a little, I wouldn't say ashamed. I'm an open book. I'm a pretty open book.
Yeah.
But there's always these part where like, oh, drugs, and people are always curious, like, what drugs? I'm just like, it was everything, bro. Just name it. I was using whatever I could get my hands on, really.
Yeah.
So like, I wouldn't say I'm ashamed, but like, I don't know. There's some parts that I feel like how do I use that to glorify God? And I just don't see any glory in it,
Yeah. Well, God delivered you from it. there's the glory, right? Because that was your path.
Yeah.
Your path was, continue down this path of drugs and escape and running and getting deeper into, our sinfulness and our own selfish desires.
Yeah.
But yet God delivered that from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. I did fall off the wagon a little bit, not recently, but like a while ago.
Uh-huh.
And it's actually why I got even more into the word now. But yeah, it was that's I guess we'll say that testimony for another time.
Okay. Yeah. That's fun. Yeah. Awesome.
But yeah, let's hear your testimony, man. I've heard it before, but I'd want to hear it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting to your testimony. My mom was a drug addict. She struggled with drugs. And my dad, I was a one-night stand. And my dad didn't know I existed for the first 16 years of my life. And so I didn't have my dad. There were men that played a big role in my life. Uncles, some guys that my mom was dating.
Yeah.
There was a neighbor, a husband, a wife, and they had kids. And he poured a lot into me as well. And, what it means to be a man, to work hard, kind of give me some basic mechanic skills, that I wasn't getting.
Yeah.
And, we struggled to have a home. We lived in a tent trailer at one point in time. And we were always, like you said, searching which couch could we sleep on tonight. We found some stability with
couch surfing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And we did that, right? It was like, we live with, my aunt, my grandmother, my grandpa, and my grandpa had this home that he lived in, and there was this kind of like a little hallway that went to the back porch, but it was a wide hallway, short and wide. And so we kind of put up a barrier and created a little room for me. So that was my room for probably about a year and a half. And then, there was another falling out, and, we had to move again. But so that was my life. There was no stability.
Yeah.
And so no answers. And I was always looking to, those who looked like there was stability. I had an uncle in the Navy that didn't know early on because he was overseas, but I had heard the stories. And so I had great respect for him. Then I had an uncle that I actually carry. I have too many names. I've got a first name and two middle names, a last name, but one of my middle names is his name. And
what's your full name then?
Arlo Robert Allen Tully.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
my name is Jesus Alejandro Cardenas Montalvo.
Okay.
That's my full name.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. So and some people think because I have like almost 3 first names that, Arlo's like a nickname or something.
Yeah.
But that's my name. So I have certificates where they skip Arlo and go right to Robert.
Yeah.
And anyhow, so yeah, my life was that, but I was also very much of a thinker. Sounds like very much like you were. And I would always wonder, like, why is that tree there? And, why is that mountain there? Why is it so tall? And like, who decided that tree would grow right there, or that, there would be this road here? Who decides these things?
Yeah.
And so I was 13 years old, and kind of, in life, I had always taken care of myself, because my mom was not always available. I'd make my own food, even at, 4 or 5 years old. I could scramble my own eggs, that kind of stuff. And so I didn't realize it, but I was watching a TV show at the time called Different Strokes.
Good show.
Yeah, it was a great show, right? At least it was then. I haven't seen it for a while.
I had to catch the reruns.
Did you?
Well, you're a little older than me, but yeah, they were on Nick at Night. The reruns were on Nick at Night. Every night. So
Nick at Night. I see, but you are dating yourself, because there are probably people that don't know what Nick at Night is. So, right, that might be listening to our podcast.
That's true.
And so, and anyhow, so on the show, Arnold, the youngest of, there's 3 of them. Arnold and Willis, his brother, were adopted, and he was invited to go to a youth group, and that led into all these questions about religion. And so they said, think you should choose your own religion. So he goes to all these different churches, and ends up choosing, I don't remember exactly, but something that they were like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't just let you choose. We should guide you.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was interesting. And, again, being one who was thinking all the time, I saw religion as something that was stable and unity. And so the show was over, and I got down on my knees, and you know what precious moments are?
Yeah. Those they were comic strips in the back of like a newspaper sometimes.
Yeah. They had all these figurines as well.
Yeah.
And there's these little children, whatever, but you would see them like praying. They'd, on their knees, back completely straight. Like, so I had like this image of like, okay, well, this is what you do to talk to God. But I didn't know who God was. And so I got on my knees after the show, and kind of like all perfect little precious moment setting, and I said, God, I don't know who you are, but I believe you're real. And I know there's a church on every corner. I don't know why. I don't know the difference between the Catholic Church, the Mormon Church, the Baptist Church, but they all can't be right. So you lead me to the right religion. Amen. That was my prayer.
Right.
So I called my mom. I wanted to go hang out with my cousin. I said, hey, I'm going to take off. I'm going to go see my cousin Derek. And she's like, okay. So I had about an 8-mile ride on my bike. And, excuse me, halfway point was my grandmother's house. And I pulled off to use the restroom, and I tried to sneak in and out real quick before grandma like really caught me, like, oh, do this for me or talk to me, or you know how grandmas can be sometimes, And I loved my grandma. She was a character, but I just wanted to go hang out with my cousin. And so as I'm taking off, she stops me, of course, like, where are you going? What are you doing? And so I get this idea, like, well, my grandma goes to church. I'll talk to her about it, and that will make her happy, and I'll be able to go. And so I go, Grandma, you go to church, don't you? And she goes, yeah. I go, where do you go? And she goes, I go to the Mormon church. I'm like, great. I want to know about the Mormons, so why don't I go to church with you on Sunday? She says, okay. And I said, I want to find my own religion. And she's like, oh, well, my friend Johnny up the street, Johnny, she goes to the Catholic church. We can go with her. And I thought, wow, that's perfect. And she goes, and I know the pastor down at the Baptist church. I'm like thinking, okay, great. Sorry, losing early in the morning.
Yeah. I'm a morning person, so.
I am too.
Yeah.
So I thought, yeah, that's perfect. We can do all that. And so she goes, yeah, do you have a Bible? And I go, well, yeah, I went to Christian school one year, and they gave me this big old Bible, super big print, extra thick. It's more of a, something we would have to copy scriptures out of, and so she gives me this little pocket Gideon Bible. And I said, okay, great. Put it in my pocket. Out the door I go, and I get to my cousin's house. As I walk in, I say, hey, I'm here. And he comes running around the corner, almost knocks me off my feet. Like, he almost like runs into me with excitement. Do you want to go to church tonight? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, you hadn't even like talked to him.
No, this is like, we're just coming face to face, And he's like, sweet, I get a candy bar for bringing someone. And I'm like, all right, cool, yeah, whatever. It's like, can you bring somebody? You'll get a candy bar too. And I'm like, yeah, I don't like. I just want to go first,
Yeah.
And he goes, well, do you have a Bible? Because you'll get a candy bar. So I reach my back pocket and pull out this little New Testament. And he goes, perfect. And I'm like, great, let's go. And he's like, no, we don't go for hours. And I was like anxious, like, oh, wait. I think we were like an hour and a half early. We were like in the front of the church waiting for people, just because I was anxious to go. And he didn't care about my story or whatever. He just knew he was getting a candy bar. But after a couple times of going to this little Christian church in Beaumont, they'd give the gospel every Wednesday night. And eventually my heart beat every time I'd hear it, knowing that I needed to just ask God in my life. Not necessarily that I needed to go forward, but I needed God in my life. And that's what they were asking people to do at the time, was to come forward and pray. And so finally I did that. And man, just my mind clicked. Even at the age of 13, I just started to have understanding that I was struggling, that I wanted. But I didn't have foundation. I really still struggled at that church getting into the Bible. As youth group, it was just about getting kids together.
Yeah.
And so I spent years, and of course my mom believed in aliens and crystals and anything but Jesus. And so I kind of struggled to really understand who God was, who Jesus was.
My mom was the same way, by the way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about like Mexican culture?
Yes. Yeah.
Super into like, it's witchcraft. That's really what it is. But
Yeah.
they have like this egg thing. You could ask any Mexican about it. They'll know exactly what I'm talking about. They call it a egg cleanse.
Uh-huh.
And basically they get like a witch lady doctor to like put an egg over you, and apparently you're taking out all this bad juju stuff.
Yeah.
Cracks it into a thing, and then she looks into it and she tells you like, oh, your life is like whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, my mom was into that. She was really into that.
Yeah.
She would like have us do that like at least once a year.
It's amazing how many people want to be spiritual,
Yeah.
but don't want to go to Jesus.
Yeah. 100%. And then it was once you go.
It's all good. Yeah.
Nah, just to finish it.
But yeah, I mean, that was my life. But I was at the age of 13. I mean, I wasn't really into drugs. But I would go hide. My grandfather sold marijuana. And so I would go hide, dig a hole. We'd create these pipes, and we'd stuff the pipes and bury it. And, it was never hidden from me. My mom would do her speed right in front of me, and she would tell her friends, oh, Arlo, he's cool. She wanted, my name comes from a hippie. She wanted me to grow my hair long, wear puka shells, and be the little hippie child, running around barefooted. And I was rebellious. I was like, I wanted to go to military school. I wanted my hair cut every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Kind of opposite of what you would think. But
that's funny that's what rebellion is to you.
Yeah. I didn't really see it as rebellious, but it was, I didn't want the life she had,
Yeah.
And when I was 10 though, we sat together and we made hash pipes together.
Mm-hmm.
And 10, 11 years old, something like that. And she still keeps that today, the one I made.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's her sacred...
Right. It was time we had together.
Yeah. That's okay.
And, it just reminds her, she's not proud of her life. She's clean now.
Mm-hmm.
And she's asked the Lord into her life. And but she has those things that she keeps. And I didn't want that, but that was just part of life. So I was in it. But at 13, that's that pivotal point for you as, 16, 17, you said you started around about 13, right? When you started, your parents separated?
And it was just rocky. But I had no like adult supervision. At that point I could do whatever I wanted.
Yeah. Well, and that was my whole life. Yeah. At 2 years old, I was doing whatever I wanted. And so, but I now look back and I see how I was on that path to drugs.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't there yet, but I was at that point in time where I'm like, I'm no longer a child. I'm definitely not even a teenager at 13. You are, but I'm still very immature, and I'm definitely not an adult, but you start to evaluate where you're at in life and what decisions you're going to make. And I was right there.
Uh-huh.
I was already exposed to sexuality. So I look back and I go, wow, God delivered me from that. Because that's the path I was headed into.
Yeah.
And he came to me, he kind of guided me, and he used a TV show, which is typically not what somebody would say.
Yeah.
But it challenged, he knew where I was in my thinking.
To plant that seed.
Yeah. And kind of lead me in that direction.
Yeah.
So.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Now I'm 50, so a lot's happened in that time,
Yeah.
had some hiccups in life, but, God has always been so faithful to come to me, and of course, that's what we see through the scripture from Genesis to Revelation is God coming to us. And that's what H2O is about, heaven to others, and is bringing heaven to others, to people, right?
Yeah.
And that's my heart with H2O, is to, minister to people, not only to point to God, but to let people learn about God, because he's written this book. He used 40 different men, but over a period of 1,500 years on 3 different continents with 3 different languages to pen these letters for us. And when you go from this book here that was written, 600 years before Jesus to somebody, a couple hundred years after Jesus, or even Genesis, right, is talking about Jesus, where 4,000 years later he shows up. You see God's work through all of that with the men that he used to pen these letters for us, this love letter to us. And it's amazing. And that's my heart, is for people to see that as well. Because we, like you talking about religion, being religious, but not knowing, your mom said, I didn't really know who Moses was.
Yeah.
Knows the name, but who was he?
She knows that he was someone in the Bible, but
right, yeah.
she doesn't understand how even that story is so profound. Because Moses is like Joseph was like an archetype for Jesus too, right? Because there's a lot of similarities with like him being how Herod was going to kill Jesus. Well, same thing with Moses. He was trying to get to him before. But so she would never know. I think till today she probably still doesn't know. But now she's kind of on board too, because we had this moment where I'm coming from a super religious point of view, just because that's kind of the route that I took at the time,
Yeah.
And I was like, Mom, what you're doing is wrong, you're doing witchcraft. She took offense to that. I should have been a little more gentle with my approach, really, in hindsight. But I would just tell her, oh, what you're doing is wrong, blah, blah. She's and she even told me how can you judge me on my beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, in hindsight, I should have been more gentle about how I approached her. But it did plant the seeds, though. She's started thinking about the things she was doing, and she's I really don't read the Bible,
right, yeah.
So it got her onto the right path, and now we discuss the Bible all the time, her and I.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
in early years, that was my heart. It wasn't as much evangelizing or sharing the gospel message to the world as much as I felt like it needed to go into the church. I forget what Puritan of the old time preacher who said it, but it might have been Spurgeon, and I might be wrong, but he said one of the best evangelistic fields is the church.
Yeah.
Because, people are doing their religious duty, but they don't know their Lord, their God. Or, and we see this a lot happening today where they said, oh yeah, I believe in Jesus, but Jesus isn't Lord of their life.
Yeah.
We even would pray, Lord, but he's not Lord. He's just this figure or this religious duty that we're appeased.
Nominal Christians.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The ones that, I believe in, you could tell them about the Bible. I believe in it 100%.
Yeah.
But then
by word alone.
Yeah. And then you find out that you're a pothead and stuff
right.
that.
Yeah.
I don't think you get it, man.
Yeah, you're missing something.
Yeah, you're missing something for sure.
And definitely, I'm very much a sinner today as I was when I was 13, right?
Yeah, same.
I sin less as I draw closer to God, and he's working, sanctifying me through all that, right?
I also recognize when I sin too now. I used to not do that. I used to not recognize that I'm sinning. I still sin, right? And then when I do, I feel bad about it. That's definitely something I'm not supposed to. I still cuss a lot, and I hate it because it's a habit that I've been doing since I was that was my form of rebellion. That was one thing my parents didn't let me do is cuss.
Right.
And so
First thing I'm going to do is say a cuss word.
yeah. So when I would go out with my friends, like F this, F that, and then when I would go home, I wouldn't cuss, because my dad would just beat the crap out of us.
Yeah.
He was very, very, he was like no play kind of guy. Like what he says goes, and that there's no in ifs, ands, or buts. What he says goes.
Yeah.
So if he heard us cuss, he would just beat the crap out of us.
Yeah.
So when I would go outside, I'm like a 6-year-old, like I'm cussing all day long,
Yeah.
So I built that habit up, and I still till today, like they flip out every now and then, just because it just comes to me naturally. That's just the way I grew up talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I still like. I'm not saying that like cussing is like the hugest sin, but it's something that I'm definitely working on myself, But I recognize that like every time I do slip it out, like I feel it. Like I'm like, okay, come on, like
right, yeah,
get it together. Come on, this is just for you to learn, I guess.
Right, yeah.
But yeah,
and we're all there, right? We're always learning, always growing, and drawn closer to God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. This was a good episode. We're at 40 minutes. I told you.
Yeah, right on.
I told you. So,
well, good. Well, hey, we've got a lot more to be talking about, right? Moving forward with the podcast, we want to talk about obviously the scripture, getting into the Bible, and and we want to invite people to join us here.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I kind of like this whole testimony route that if we just started with right now.
Yeah,
I like it. So it's something we could share on our podcast. We could have people come in to have testimonies to tell. Could we share that?
Yeah.
So
there are many more people out there. So, well, good. Any last words?
Yeah, I mean, there's still more for me to share too. So
yeah,
we'll do on the next episode.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. We're good.
Good. Yeah.
All right,
guys. Well, I feel so weird saying this. Hit that click, subscribe, share,
do all the podcast things, right?
The podcast,
share. You know what? I do want to say this is because, we're not doing this just because we want to do this. And we'll wrap this up here, but we're doing this because we are growing in Christ, and we want others to join us in that venture, as well as, we have a whole ministry called H20. You can go to heaven2others.com, heaven2others.com, to the website, and you can find us on YouTube, and
we'll link it.
We'll do all those links. Jesse will do all those links.
I'll do that.
I can do it, but I'm not good at it, so I'll trust in Jesse to do all that. Link it. And
you used to watch Different Strokes, so they get it.
Yeah, interested. Hold on, thanks. We were asked to join and then share this as well, because one of the biggest points to really walking out the faith is actually going out. That's the Great Commission. So share, and God bless you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode.
All right.